I couldn't believe it. After all the years of service, all the sacrifices, and every summer I spent at my grandfather's side, the only thing I inherited from his estate was a battered old dog toy. No land, no farmhouse, not even a small savings account, just a piece of leather so worn it looked like trash. It felt like the cruelest joke, a slap in the face from the man I trusted most. My name is Jonas Keene. I'm a veteran shaped by discipline, scars, and memories I wish I could forget. When I came back to Sparrow Creek Valley, I thought I'd finally find peace on the land I grew up on. Instead, I sat in that suffocating lawyer's office with my jaw clenched and my hands shaking while cousins smirked at the fortune they had just secured. Beside me, my two loyal companions, Atlas, a German shepherd, and Luna, a sharp-eyed husky, rested at my feet, their steady presence keeping me from falling apart. That's when something strange happened. Neither Atlas nor Luna treated the leather dummy as a toy. They didn't tug or chew it, they guarded it. Atlas growled low when someone reached too close, and Luna kept nudging it toward me as if she was urging me to look deeper. I stared at that worthless object, confusion twisting into suspicion. What was I missing? Why would my grandfather, of all people, leave me? Only this anger, grief, and curiosity battled inside me. I wanted to throw the toy away, to storm out and leave the humiliation behind. But a voice inside whispered that there was more, that my grandfather wasn't mocking me. He was testing me. Stay with me. Something hidden inside this worthless gift is about to change everything. And if you want to follow this journey, please support the channel by subscribing right now. I sat in my truck for a long time. After leaving that office, the weight of humiliation pressing down harder than the Montana winter air outside. The old leather dummy lay on the passenger seat, cracked and useless, its stitches frayed with time. Atlas and Luna sat in the back, their amber and ice blue eyes locked on me in a silence that felt heavier than words. I wanted to believe the toy meant nothing. Maybe my grandfather had lost his mind in his final days. Maybe he'd grown bitter toward me, or maybe he thought my service, my sacrifices weren't worth honoring. But then Atlas shifted forward, pressing his nose against the toy, and Luna let out a soft whine, her tail stiff, her ears pricked in alertness. It wasn't just an old scrap of leather to them. I picked it up and turned it over in my hands. It smelled faintly of oil and dust, the scent of my grandfather's workshop, a memory that stung my chest. Atlas growled low, a protective rumble I had only heard in combat zones when something was off. Luna nudged my arm with her muzzle, insistent, her blue eyes bright and certain. They were trying to tell me something. That old toy, as worthless as it looked, held a meaning I couldn't see. I slammed the steering wheel, anger boiling up. "What the hell did you mean by this, Grandpa?" My voice cracked, more grief than fury, but still it echoed in the small cab of the truck. Atlas raised his head, ears tilting toward me, while Luna placed a paw on the console, as if reminding me I wasn't alone. That tiny gesture broke something inside me. I had been angry, yes, but beneath the anger was heartbreak. My grandfather had been everything to me, a guide, a mentor, the one steady figure after I came back from the war, broken and hollow. And now he was gone, leaving me nothing but a toy, unless it wasn't nothing. I pulled the folded piece of paper from my pocket, the note the lawyer had handed me, along with the toy. My hands trembled as I unfolded it, my eyes scanning the familiar script. "Take them to our thinking spot by the creek. They'll know what to do." That was all it said. No explanation, no comfort, no apology. Just a cryptic instruction that sounded like riddles whispered by dying men. I wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it, but the sound caught in my throat. Our thinking spot. I knew exactly where that was. A wide slab of granite overlooking the bend in Sparrow Creek, where he and I used to sit in silence for hours. Sometimes fishing poles in hand, sometimes nothing at all. Just the rush of water, the whisper of pines, and his voice teaching me patience. I could see it in my mind as clearly as if I were standing there now. The way he'd rest his hand on my shoulder and say, "The land speaks, Jonas. You just have to learn how to listen." Atlas barked once, sharp and eager, pulling me back to the present. Luna pawed at the toy again, her nails scratching the cracked leather. My heart thudded. Could it be that simple? Was this some elaborate message hidden in the only thing he knew? I'd never ignore the bond with my dogs. Doubt clawed at me. Maybe I was losing it. Maybe grief had me chasing shadows, turning scraps into omens. But then I looked at them, Atlas with his steady amber gaze loyal as the sun, and Luna with her restless energy, eyes that missed nothing. They weren't confused. They weren't grieving in circles like I was. They were certain. Whatever my grandfather had planned, he had included them in it. I shoved the truck into gear and headed for the old trail that wound down toward the creek. The late autumn sky was streaked with fire, the mountains capped with early snow, and every bump in the dirt road seemed to jar loose another memory. I remembered being 10 years old, racing ahead to the flat rock, Atlas's predecessor bounding beside me, Grandpa's laugh carrying through the trees. I remembered the first time I came home from deployment, still shaking from nightmares, sitting on that same rock with him, as he said nothing, just let the silence heal me. That place wasn't just a spot by the water, it was the heart of everything between us. By the time I parked near the trailhead, my chest felt tight. I clipped leashes onto Atlas and Luna, but they pulled hard, straining forward, as if they already knew where we were going. The forest floor was thick with fallen leaves, damp with the smell of rain and earth. My boots crunched softly, but their paws moved with a rhythm that felt purposeful, sure. When we reached the creek, the sound of rushing water filled the valley like a hymn. The flat rock gleamed in the fading light, just as I remembered, and for a moment, I stood frozen, the toy heavy in my hand. Atlas paced in a slow circle, nose working the air, while Luna jumped onto the rock, tail wagging with nervous energy. She barked once, then twice, looking at me, then at the toy. "All right," I muttered, my voice shaking. "Let's see what this is all about." I tossed the leather dummy across the clearing, and both dogs launched after it, muscles, coiled bodies moving like shadows across the grass. Luna reached it first, gripping it carefully, but instead of chewing, she dropped it at Atlas's paws. He lowered his head, jaw clamping down with deliberate force, worrying one particular seam. My pulse quickened. The sound of stitches straining filled the air. Then it happened. A loud snap, the seam splitting under Atlas's persistence. Something small and metallic slipped free, catching the last rays of the sun before clinking against the rock. I rushed forward, heart pounding, and stared down at the object gleaming in the dirt. A key. An old brass key, worn smooth by time, with numbers etched into its head. Atlas backed away, chest-heaving, eyes fixed on me as if to say, "This is what he wanted you to find." Luna whined softly, nosing the key toward my hand. I picked it up, the cold metal, sending a jolt through my skin. The toy wasn't a joke. It was a vessel. A test. And my grandfather hadn't abandoned me, he had chosen me. I dropped to my knees on that slab of rock, the key clenched tight in my fist, my dogs pressing close on either side. Tears stung my eyes, but this time they weren't from grief alone. They were from the spark of something bigger, something that had been buried under sorrow and doubt. Purpose. My grandfather had left me more than a toy. He had left me a path, and I had just taken the first step. The brass key felt heavier than any weapon I'd ever carried. Its edges dug into my palm, not sharp, but insistent, like it was demanding I pay attention. Atlas sat tall at my side chest, still rising hard from the effort of tearing the toy apart. Luna pressed her cold nose against my wrist, her blue eyes fixed on the key, as if she already understood its purpose. I turned it over, again and again, my breath clouding in the cool evening air. A number was etched faintly across the head, 247. That number burned itself into my mind. I didn't know why, but it was familiar, the way a half-remembered song lingers on your tongue. I stuffed the key in my pocket and sat there for a long moment, listening to the creak. My grandfather had never done anything by accident. If he went through all this trouble, hiding a key in a toy, writing a cryptic note, there had to be a reason. I drove into town the next morning, the dogs restless in the back seat. The sun was still low, spilling pale gold across Sparrow Creek's narrow streets. I parked in front of the Montana Merchants Bank, a building I'd passed 1,000 times without ever stepping inside. It looked like a fortress built of granite blocks and thick oak doors, a relic from the mining days. Now standing before it, I felt as if the whole place had been waiting for me. Inside the air was cool and smelled faintly of polish and paper. A young woman at the counter glanced up with a polite smile. I swallowed suddenly, aware of how out of place I looked in my worn jacket and scuffed boots, holding the future in my pocket. I have something. I managed, pulling the brass key from my jeans and placing it on the marble counter. I think it belongs here. Her eyes flickered when she read the number. Box 247. Do you have an account with us? My grandfather did. Arthur Keene. Recognition softened her expression. Everyone in town knew him. She disappeared into the back, returning with a large ledger, so worn the leather binding looked like it might crumble. She ran her finger down a page, then looked up at me. Yes. Box 247. The account holder was Arthur Keene. You're listed as the sole beneficiary. I'll have our vault manager assist you. The world tilted for a second, relief and shock hitting me all at once. It was real. This wasn't some wild goose chase, wasn't just grief driving me mad. My grandfather had set this up. A stern man with gray hair led me through a heavy gate and down a hallway that hummed with silence. At the end stood a massive steel door, the vault itself round and imposing like something out of an old war film. He worked the mechanisms with a steady hand, the clicks echoing in my chest. When the door swung open, the cool air inside rushed past me, dry and sterile, but strangely comforting. We stopped at a small metal drawer stamped 247. The manager inserted his key into the top lock, then stepped back. Yours goes in the bottom. My hand shook as I slid the brass key home. It fit perfectly. One turn, and the lock released with a final decisive thunk. The drawer slid out heavy and cold, containing a long box of polished steel. They left me alone in a small room with nothing but a table, 2 chairs, and the box. For a moment I just stared at it. My reflection wavered on its surface. A man both familiar and foreign. Tired eyes, a jaw set too hard, shoulders braced as if for a firefight. My dogs weren't here to steady me, and for the first time in years, I felt truly alone. I opened it. Inside lay 2 things, a thick folder tied with string and a cream envelope sealed in wax. On the envelope in my grandfather's hand were the words, "For Jonas." My heart pounded. I reached for the folder, first needing facts before feelings. The paper inside smelled faintly of dust and time. The top page was dense with legal language, but my eyes caught the words that mattered: deed of ownership. The property described was 40 acres of land, Spring Creek Meadow. My name was written in black ink on the grantee line, Jonas Keene. I read it again, then again, each time harder to breathe. Spring Creek Meadow wasn't just any piece of land. It was the beating heart of our valley, the source of the clear water that fed farms for miles. The place where my grandmother used to walk, with wild flowers in her hands. It was sacred ground, and it was mine. The anger I had carried since the will reading collapsed under the weight of this truth. He hadn't cast me aside. He had entrusted me with the one thing he couldn't risk falling into the wrong hands. With trembling fingers, I picked up the envelope. I broke the seal and unfolded the letter inside. The handwriting was steady, though faint, each word carrying his voice. "My dear Jonas," it began. "If you are reading this, then my plan worked. Forgive me for the pain I caused. Leaving you only that toy was the hardest thing I ever did. But I had to be certain. The meadow is the soul of our family. Men from faraway cities will come for it. They will promise riches, progress, salvation. They will take the water, and when it's gone, they will leave nothing but dust. Your cousin might sell for the right price, but you, Jonas, you see the worth of a sunrise, not a dollar. That's why it had to be you." I couldn't keep the tears from spilling down my face. His words cut deeper than any blade, but they healed as they cut. He trusted me, not just with land, but with legacy. The key was hidden in the only way I knew would reach you, through the loyalty of your dogs. I stitched it myself strong enough that only patience and persistence could free it. The meadow is now legally yours. What you do with it is up to you. But my hope, my prayer, is that you protect it for your grandmother, for me, and for the generations yet to come. I pressed the pages to my chest, the smell of his ink and paper flooding me with memory. The weight of anger and betrayal drained away, leaving something steadier, resolve. But beneath that resolve stirred a new question, sharp and unsettling. Why had he hidden it this way? Why had he created such a trial, risking that I might never find the key at all? And why had he spoken with such certainty that men would come for the water? I gathered the deed and the letter, slid them back into the box, and closed the lid. The click echoed like a gunshot. I wasn't just holding papers. I was holding a warning. When I stepped back into the crisp daylight, the key still warm in my pocket. Atlas and Luna barked from the truck, their tails thumping against the seats. They had known from the start. They had led me here. I scratched their ears, forcing a smile through the storm inside me. He didn't leave us nothing, I whispered. He left us everything. But now we've got a fight coming. And deep down, I knew my grandfather was right. This was only the beginning. When I pulled back into Sparrow Creek, the box of documents resting on the passenger seat, my stomach churned with a strange mixture of relief and dread. Atlas sprawled across the back seat, his amber eyes never leaving me, while Luna pressed her nose against the window, ears twitching at every sound. I had proof now, the deed, the letter, the words that explained everything. But holding the truth and wielding it were two different things. And I knew the moment I revealed it, the quiet walls of our family would splinter. I didn't have to wait long. David was already waiting at the old farmhouse when I arrived. He leaned against the porch railing, arms crossed, his crisp shirt and polished boots looking as out of place as ever against the weathered wood. He forced a smile when he saw me, but his eyes told another story, nervous, calculating, almost desperate. "Jonas," he called out, voice too bright. "We need to talk." Atlas jumped out first, planting himself between us, his stance calm but alert. Luna followed, tail stiff, her husky gaze narrowing on David, as if she sensed what I already knew: this wasn't going to be a friendly conversation. "What is it?" I asked, keeping my voice flat. He gestured toward the fields, the wide sweep of land stretching golden under the afternoon Sunday. "You know what's coming. Taxes, debts. The farm isn't what it used to be. But I've found a way out, a deal that could save us." I felt the words coming before he said them, heavy as stones in my gut. "There's a company," he continued. "Aquapure. They want to invest here. Big money, Jonas. They'll buy out the land, build a state-of-the-art bottling plant. Jobs for the town, stability for the family. This could be the answer to everything." My jaw tightened. Aquapure. The name in my grandfather's letter echoed like a curse. Men from faraway cities. Men who saw water as nothing more than profit. "You're selling the land?" I asked, my voice quiet but sharp. David frowned. "It's my land. You heard the will. The farm is mine. I'm offering you a chance to be part of this, instead of standing in the way." I reached into the truck, pulled out the folder, and slapped the deed against my palm. "Not all of it. Spring Creek Meadow belongs to me. Legally." Grandpa made sure of that. The color drained from his face, replaced by a bitter laugh. "You expect me to believe that he left you a dog toy, Jonas? A damn toy? And now you come here with some old paper and say the heart of the farm is yours?" I handed him the deed. "It's not just paper. It's binding. He gave you the farm, yes, but he gave me the meadow. Because he knew what you'd do with it." He read it, his fingers tightening around the edges, his mouth twisting. "This can't be real. Why would he trust you with the most valuable piece when I'm the one keeping this place afloat? You were gone for years, Jonas, off fighting wars while I was here, dealing with the droughts, the debts, the endless grind. And now you show up and say you're the chosen one. No, I won't accept it." Atlas growled low, the sound vibrating through the ground, while Luna pressed close to my leg. I met David's glare head on. "It's not about me. It's about the water. You see dollar signs." He saw what it really is, life. And he knew you'd sell it if someone waved the right check in your face. His lips curled. "Aquapure's offer could erase every debt. This isn't about greed, Jonas. It's about survival. You think you're protecting the family by clutching at some idealistic memory, but all you're doing is condemning us to ruin. Don't you get it? Without their money, this farm will die. I thought of the letter, the steady hand of my grandfather, warning me that the world was changing, that corporations would come to strip the valley bare. And now here it was, unfolding exactly as he said. Better the farm dies than the meadow, I said softly but firmly. Once the water is gone, nothing else matters. Not here. Not for generations. For a moment, silence hung between us, thick and sharp. Then a sleek black car rolled down the dirt road, dust curling up in its wake. It stopped beside the farmhouse, and a man in a tailored gray suit stepped out. His shoes gleamed, his smile was wide, but his eyes cold, calculating, never left me. "Mr. Keene," he said smoothly, extending a hand I didn't take. "Richard Thompson, Aquapure Corporation. I've heard a lot about you." I stood still, Atlas and Luna flanking me like sentinels. Not interested. Thompson's smile didn't falter. "I think you'll want to hear me out. We're offering your cousin here a solution to all his financial troubles and an opportunity for this community to thrive. Modern jobs, new infrastructure, prosperity. It's what towns like Sparrow Creek desperately need." I could feel David's eyes on me, pleading as if hoping I'd back him up. Instead, I kept my gaze locked on Thompson. "And all you want is the water," I said. Thompson chuckled softly. "Water is life, Mr. Keene. We simply want to share that life with the rest of the country. Surely you can see the bigger picture." Atlas snarled, the fur along his spine rising, while Luna let out a sharp bark that cut through the air like a warning bell. Thompson's eyes flicked to them, amused but wary. "Fine animals," he said, "but even they can't stop progress." I stepped forward close enough to see the faint lines around his mouth where his smile faltered. "You don't understand. That meadow isn't for sale. Not now, not ever. My grandfather knew men like you would come, and he made sure I'd be ready." Thompson's eyes narrowed, the charm in his voice slipping into steel. "We'll see about that." The car door slammed behind him as he returned to the driver's seat. Dust rose as he pulled away, leaving the smell of exhaust and tension hanging in the air. David turned back to me, his face twisted with anger and something like fear. "You've just ruined everything." "No," I said, my voice steady, the deed still firm in my grip. "I've just started the fight." Atlas pressed against my leg. Luna's tail brushed my hand, and in that moment I knew I wasn't alone. My grandfather's warning had come to life, and the battle was no longer just between me and David. It was between all of us, and the kind of men who believed life itself could be bottled and sold. And I would not back down. That night I couldn't sleep. The image of Thompson's cold eyes lingered in my mind, along with the weight of David's anger. My grandfather's letter had been clear: men in suits would come for the water. Now they had a name, a face, and a plan, and I knew they weren't going to walk away just because I told them no. Atlas lay by the door, ears pricked, every muscle taut. Luna shifted restlessly on the rug, occasionally lifting her head and giving a low whine as if she sensed the unease twisting inside me. I rubbed the deed with my thumb, the paper fragile but firm, and realized it wasn't enough. Words on a page wouldn't stop a corporation with lawyers and money. I needed proof, something undeniable. The chance came sooner than I expected. A few days later, as I was driving back from town, I spotted a black rental car tucked into the trees near the northern edge of the property. I didn't slow down, didn't give them the satisfaction of knowing I'd seen, but my pulse quickened. They were scouting, watching, planning, and I knew what I had to do. When night fell, I pulled on my old field jacket and boots, clipped the small camera I'd bought to my belt, and looked down at Atlas and Luna. "We're going on patrol," I whispered. Their tails didn't wag, not tonight. They seemed to understand this was different, serious. Atlas's eyes gleamed like amber coals in the lamplight, steady and sharp, while Luna pressed close, her husky instincts electric with anticipation. We moved through the woods in silence, avoiding the main paths, keeping to the cover of pines and shadow. The moon hung thin and pale, offering little light, but I'd learned long ago how to read terrain by feel, and my dogs guided me with a sense sharper than sight. Every crack of a twig underfoot, every shift of wind through branches set my nerves on edge. But then Atlas froze, body stiff, head low. Luna followed, ears flat, a low rumble vibrating in her chest. I crouched beside them, Through the trees I saw two beams of light, sweeping over the meadow, sharp and artificial against the soft glow of starlight. Voices carried across the creek, low, urgent, and familiar. One was Thompson. The other belonged to a stranger, stocky, crouched at the water's edge with a case of equipment. I pressed record on the camera, the red light glowing faintly as I zoomed in. Thompson stood with his hands in his pockets, his polished shoes sinking awkwardly into the soft earth, while the stranger filled vials with water and scraped sediment into bags. My heart pounded. They weren't just scouting, they were testing, taking what wasn't theirs. "The water's clean, Thompson," the man said, his voice gravelly. "Pristine. Field tests are off the charts." "That's a problem," Thompson muttered, impatience in every word. "We need leverage. Find something we can spin, trace, minerals, bacteria, anything. If it's too perfect, our utility claim won't stick. We'll make the EPA doubt its quality." My fists clenched. They weren't only stealing samples, they were plotting to poison the truth. The man packed his kit, zipping vials into a padded case. Thompson's voice dropped lower, colder. "And if we can't discredit the water, we'll tie up the deed. Drag Keene through probate court until he's bankrupt. He won't last against our legal team. We'll bleed him dry. Either way, the meadow will be ours." Atlas let out a deep growl, so soft it was more vibration than sound. I placed a hand on his neck, steadying him. He quivered with the urge to lunge to protect, but he obeyed, loyal and disciplined. Luna pressed against my leg, her breath quick and sharp, her eyes locked on the intruders. I kept the camera steady, recording every word, every movement. My pulse hammered in my ears, but beneath the adrenaline was a calm focus I hadn't felt since my days in uniform. This was evidence. This was the weapon my grandfather had meant for me to wield. When the two men finished, they swept their lights over the ground, checking for signs of their presence. Thompson said something I couldn't hear, and then they trudged back toward the road. I stayed crouched behind the boulder long after their headlights vanished into the distance, the night slowly reclaiming its silence. Only when I was sure they were gone did I lower the camera. Atlas exhaled, easing back onto his haunches, while Luna licked my hand as if to reassure me. I pulled them both close, burying my face in their fur. "You did good," I whispered, my voice breaking with emotion. "You kept us steady." Back at the cabin, I played the video over and over, the shaky footage capturing their crime as clearly as daylight. Thompson's words, cold and arrogant, were there on record. The stranger's report, the scheme to twist perfection into flaw, every syllable was preserved. It was the proof I needed, the kind of truth that couldn't be buried under contracts or lies. Still, as I sat there in the flickering lamplight, the weight of it pressed heavy. This wasn't just about me anymore, or even about David. Thompson was willing to burn through courts, to manipulate agencies, to crush me under the weight of his company's power. And if they succeeded, Sparrow Creek wouldn't just lose land, it would lose its heart. Atlas lay at my feet, his head resting on his paws, eyes still watchful even in rest. Luna curled beside him, her tail twitching in uneasy dreams. I reached down and touched them both, feeling their warmth, their loyalty, their unshakable trust. My grandfather had been right. The toy wasn't worthless. It had led me to the key, and the key had led me here to this moment. This fight wasn't only mine, it was ours. A man and his dogs, bound by loyalty, standing against men who thought everything could be bought. I slipped the camera into my jacket pocket, feeling its weight beside the deed. Proof and promise, side by side. The battle wasn't over. It was only just beginning. The days after I caught Thompson and his man at the creek moved in a blur. The video sat heavy in my pocket, a digital time bomb waiting to explode. Every time I watched it, I felt the same surge of anger and cold resolve. They weren't just planning to take the water, they were planning to break me, drag me through courts until I had nothing left. But I had them now. Their words, their intent, proof. It all came to a head when the town council called a meeting to discuss Aquapure's proposal. The entire valley showed up. I'd never seen Sparrow Creek's town hall so full, farmers in worn boots, shopkeepers still in aprons, young families clutching restless kids. On one side of the aisle sat David, straight-backed but pale, beside Thompson in his immaculate suit. On the other, I sat with Atlas at my feet and Luna pressed against my leg, their calm presence grounding me. The mayor, a man whose voice usually cracked with nerves, called the room to order. Thompson went first. He strode to the podium with the confidence of someone who'd won this fight 100 times before. His words painted pictures of jobs growth, a future where Sparrow Creek thrived under Aquapure's guiding hand. Charts and promises flashed on a screen behind him, the numbers climbing upward, bright and hopeful. By the time he finished, half the room was nodding. Then David stood. His voice was shaky but earnest, as he spoke of debt, of fear, of the weight of watching the family farm sink under his hands. His desperation rang true, and when he sat down, applause filled the room. The mayor cleared his throat. "Mr. Keene, you have the floor." I rose slowly, the folder clutched tight in my hand. My boots echoed on the wooden floor as I walked to the podium. For a moment, I just stood there, looking at the crowd. These were people I'd known my whole life. Men who'd worked beside my grandfather, women who'd watched me grow up, kids who waved at Atlas and Luna when we passed on the street. And yet since the will I'd felt, their eyes on me pitying, doubting. The grandson who'd been left with nothing, the soldier too broken to carry on. I took a deep breath. "I know what you've all heard," I began. My voice sounded rough, but it carried. That I was left with nothing but a toy. That I was cast aside. That I've been standing in the way of progress out of pride or jealousy. I paused, the silence thick around me. And for a while, I believed it too. I believed my grandfather had abandoned me. Atlas shifted, his head lifting, as if to remind me why I was standing here. I laid my hand on his fur and continued. "But the truth is different. That toy wasn't worthless. It was a test. Inside it was this." I held up the brass key, letting the light catch on its worn surface. That key led me to a safe deposit box, and inside that box was a deed and a letter. My grandfather didn't abandon me. He entrusted me with the one thing he couldn't risk losing: Spring Creek Meadow, the source of the water that feeds every farm in this valley. I opened the folder and lifted the deed high enough for the council to see. Legally registered. My name on it. "The meadow belongs to me." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some surprised, some doubtful, some relieved. "But that's not all," I said, my voice sharpening. "You deserve to know what Aquapure really intends." I pulled the small projector from my bag, connected my camera, and pressed play. The grainy footage filled the wall behind me. Thompson and his man crouched by the creek, filling vials, their voices carrying in the night air. The room fell silent as Thompson's words played, "Find something we can spin. If we can't discredit the water, we'll bury him in court. We'll bleed him dry. We'll get the land one way or another." When the video ended, the silence was suffocating. Faces turned, eyes widened, jaws tightened. The council members stared at Thompson, whose mask of charm had slipped, his jaw rigid, his smile gone. I let the silence stretch, then spoke again. "This isn't about jobs. This isn't about saving our town. This is about stripping it. They don't see a home. They see a resource. And when they're done, they'll leave us with dust and empty wells." My grandfather knew this. That's why he gave the meadow to me. Not because I was better than David, not because I deserved more, but because he knew I wouldn't sell. I felt the weight of my own words press down, the memory of sitting in that lawyer's office with nothing but a toy in my hand. I let that pain bleed into my voice. I thought I was rejected. I thought I was worthless. But the truth is, I wasn't abandoned. I was chosen. Chosen to protect what matters most. And I won't fail him. I won't fail you. Atlas let out a low, steady bark that echoed in the stillness. Luna raised her head, eyes blazing. The timing was so perfect it almost felt rehearsed. A few people chuckled nervously. Then the tension broke into murmurs of support, nods, even claps. The mayor banged his gavel, his face pale but resolute. "Council will vote." One by one, the 5 members spoke, "No, no, 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 no." Final. The room erupted. Cheers, applause, the stomp of boots on the wooden floor. Thompson stood rigid, his eyes like knives, but he knew the battle was lost. David's face crumpled, shame heavy in his features. He looked at me, his mouth opening as if to speak, but no words came. I stepped down from the podium, Atlas and Luna pressing close, and for the first time since that day in the lawyer's office, I felt the knot in my chest ease. The boy who was left with nothing was gone. In his place stood the man my grandfather had trusted all along, the guardian of the meadow. When the meeting finally broke apart, people crowded around me, clapping my back, thanking me, telling me my grandfather would be proud. But all I could see was David standing off to the side, shoulders sagging, eyes downcast. The man who had once strutted through these halls full of certainty now looked like a boy caught in the middle of a storm. I walked over Atlas and Luna shadowing me, their bodies relaxed, now their duty done. David looked up, his jaw tight, but the fight had drained out of him. For the first time in years, I saw not arrogance in his eyes but shame, and something deeper, a plea for forgiveness. "I thought I was doing the right thing," he muttered, his voice low so only I could hear. "I thought if I could save the farm, none of the rest would matter. I didn't see what I was giving up. I didn't see what Grandpa was trying to protect." I let the silence sit between us, heavy with all the years of rivalry and resentment. Then I placed the deed in his hands. He looked at it like it was fire. "You were right to want to save this place," I said softly. "But there's more than one way to protect a legacy. We can fight for it together. The meadow belongs to me on paper, but it belongs to both of us in blood." His hands trembled as he gave the deed back. "No, it belongs to you. Grandpa chose you. And after tonight, I understand why." His voice cracked, and for a moment he was just my cousin again, not my rival. "Let me help. Let me stand with you." Atlas pressed his head against David's leg, startling him. Luna's tail thumped once, slow and forgiving. That simple gesture broke what was left of the wall between us. David reached down awkwardly, patting Atlas, then looked back at me with tears shining in his eyes. From the outside, the whole journey must have seemed strange. A broken soldier, a leather toy, 2 loyal dogs, and a valley on the line. But in that moment, standing beside David, I understood the truth my grandfather had hidden in riddles and trials. He hadn't left me nothing. He had left me everything: trust, responsibility, a chance to heal what was broken, not just in the land, but in the family. The toy that once felt like an insult had become a symbol of loyalty. The key it carried had opened more than a vault. It had opened a circle from rejection to belonging, from shame to purpose. I wasn't the grandson left with scraps. I was the one chosen to carry the weight, and not alone. As we walked out into the cool night air, the stars sharp above Sparrow Creek, David at my side, and Atlas and Luna leading the way, I felt the meadow's promise deep in my chest. We had been tested, and we had endured. Now, together, we would guard what mattered most. When I look back on everything that happened, the reading of the will, the sting of humiliation, the moment I thought my grandfather had cast me aside, I can see now that it was all part of the path he wanted me to walk. The leather toy that seemed worthless at first became the doorway to everything, the key to the meadow, the letter of trust, the truth about Aquapure, even the reconciliation with David. What began as pain and betrayal ended in purpose and responsibility. Atlas and Luna never once doubted. From the first moment they bristled at that old toy, they knew there was more. Their loyalty carried me through when my faith faltered, when my anger nearly broke me. My grandfather may have left the key in my hands, but it was my dogs who led me to unlock it. And in their steady eyes, I finally understood what he had been trying to teach me all along. Legacy isn't measured in money or land alone. It's measured in trust, sacrifice, and the choices we make when no one is watching. Now David and I stand side by side, guardians of Spring Creek Meadow. The fight with Aquapure isn't over. Men like Thompson don't vanish when they're beaten. Once they regroup, they come back stronger, and they bring more with them. I can feel the storm gathering on the horizon. But this time, we're ready. Not just me, not just my dogs, but a whole town that saw the truth with their own eyes. And maybe that's the real reason my grandfather left things the way he did. He didn't just want me to protect the meadow. He wanted me to stand up in front of others, to take the blow of being dismissed, and then to rise again so the whole valley could see. He wanted me to transform that feeling of being abandoned into proof that I was chosen, and now I know I was. But what comes next? That's the question that keeps me awake at night. Thompson's eyes, as he walked out of the town hall, weren't the eyes of a man who had given up. They were the eyes of someone planning his next move. Aquapure has power, resources, and reach far beyond Sparrow Creek, and if they couldn't buy the meadow, I fear they'll find another way to take it. So I'll ask you, what would you do in my place? If the future of your family's legacy, your community, even your water rested in your hands, how far would you go to protect it? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Share this story with those who believe, like my grandfather did, that some things are worth more than money. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Because trust me, this battle is only beginning. The meadow may be safe tonight, but the war for it has only just started.